welcome to Therapy for Nerds, psychoeducation through nerdy topics. If you like therapists slapping psychological meaning and theories on all sorts of nerdy stuff, please like, comment, and subscribe. My name is Cassidy, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and let's get into today's topic. So, my last Steven Universe episode is now my most viewed video, and of course it is the one where I keep calling Lapis Lapras, and didn't go back to fix it because I was too lazy and did not think very many people would watch it. And now here we are. Anyways, I had been planning on talking about Steven Universe future, but now the pressure is on because I told a commenter I would. In my last video, I utilized Steven as an example of a character with high emotional intelligence. In the original series, this made a lot of sense. He seemed to have a good grasp on his own emotions and the emotions of the people around him. He was even able to use his emotional intelligence to connect with everyone, including his enemies, and resolve conflicts. This is not the case in future. We have now seen Steven have emotional outbursts that seem out of place for him, but they are very reminiscent of what we have heard about Pink Diamond. The gems really don't need Steven as much anymore. Of course, his adoptive mothers all love him, but they've sorted out the majority of their emotional baggage. Steven is having a rough time. He can't use his normal coping skill of solving other people's problems. Honestly, this is pretty normal for some of the people I see. I have a saying that's up on my wall. The only person you can control is yourself. I'm going to talk about the episodes one at a time. This might end up being annoying to edit and very long, but oh well. Okay, so first we have Little Homeschool. We get a closer look at what Steven and the Crystal Gems have accomplished. We get a sense that most of the gems are pretty open to it, but not all of them. Jasper in particular. So Steven goes off to do what Steven does best, try to talk it out with her. The only problem is that Jasper's really not interested in the slightest in talking to him. She does perk up at the thought of fighting him though, so they battle it out. And we get a glimpse at Pink Steven. Pink Steven seems to come out when he is angry, which reminds me a lot of anime and also a lot of adolescence. Puberty is a very difficult time. I feel that Steven is experiencing mood swings often associated with puberty. Of course, what doesn't help is the frustration he feels over not being able to help Jasper. He desperately wants Jasper to like him and to join the fold, but this is not going to happen. Well, for now at least. I wouldn't be surprised if Jasper ends up being like Vegeta or Piccolo, a character that ends up really being his teacher, but that's just blind speculation on my part. Steven feels like a failure. It's the first loss that he suffers over the course of future, and is kind of indicative of all the losses that are to come. Next we have Guidance, which I feel is an episode that hits Steven where it hurts the most. His already dwindling self-confidence and his ability to help others. Steven is a helper. He is a people pleaser. If he isn't helping others, then he isn't satisfied with life. It is his whole life's purpose, which is not good. If you depend on others for your life to have meaning, then it leaves a whole lot of room for disappointment, frustration, and, well, a lot of other emotions. Steven makes a point that the jobs that they pick are all similar to the jobs that they had on Homeworld, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. It can be hard to take a step out of your comfort zone. Steven makes a good point, but then also forces the issue too quickly. After becoming more acclimated to life on Earth, then the chances that they might want to try something different in the future. But it's only been a couple of years since peace was declared. In his effort to help others, he steamrolls over Amethyst, even though this was her idea in the first place, making her feel, understandably, pretty shitty. After he and Amethyst make up, and after the chaos is sorted out, it is shown that at least one gem was helped to find something different, and to find something that they really enjoyed. Still, this doesn't do too much to help Steven's mental state. For the most part, this feels like another loss for him, strengthening the fear that he may not be of use to anyone anymore. Rosebud was an awkward episode to say the least. It was interesting to see the rose quartzes, but I can see why no one was ready for it. Steven continued to do the thing where he attempts to be nice and accommodating to others at his own expense, which then leads to everyone getting hurt. I was glad to see that they ended it with agreeing that it was awkward shared and that they were basically siblings. But it was hard to see Steven pushing his emotions down like that. He was so focused on pleasing others when all he had to do was tell them that he was uncomfortable. He avoided doing the very thing he spent the entirety of the show preaching about. In volleyball, we get to learn more about what happened to Pink Pearl, or volleyball. Everyone on the show assumed it was White Diamond that scarred her, but most fans had already speculated that it had been Pink Diamond. Still, the thought of that potential being in Steven is unsettling, to say the least. It was great to see Pearl get more closure, and the Pearl fusion was amazing. I will pick this time to talk a little bit more about Pink. I recently saw another YouTuber call Pink's arc a reverse redemption arc, and I like that because I feel like it really suits it. Pink started out as this figure that was so perfect, too perfect. So loving and wise and caring and beautiful, but we learn slowly that this isn't really the case. So Steven went from trying to reach this unrealistic ideal of what he should be to attempting to distance himself from his mother in every way possible. As a therapist, I have very mixed feelings about Pink. On one hand, she has done terrible things. We don't know the details about what she did to her Pearl, but we can see the scar it left, and there's really no excuse. I am curious to see the details of why and how this exactly happened. However, I will reiterate that a reason is not an excuse. This is something I have to tell my clients. We can find a reason for something, the cause, but that doesn't necessarily give people a free pass to behave in certain ways. I do feel like Pink was stuck in a perpetual childhood, never being able to grow up. In the episode Greg and the Babysitter, she comments on how envious she is that humans have the ability to grow up. She says that gems are born the way they're born, and that gems come into being already knowing what their life's purpose is. She came into this world a child and was continually told that she wouldn't be anything else. Not only was she a perpetual child, but the childhood she was living in was pretty terrible. There's a lot of fan theories on why Pink would make Steven. Some people think that this was in order for her to run away from her problem, a way to have someone else fix her mistakes, which she had plenty of, and I think she did realize that she had a lot. But honestly, I think that's a little too much planning for her. I know she is remembered as being a great leader for the Crystal Gems, but she certainly didn't think about how the Diamonds would handle a rebellion. Anyone with the slightest bit of forethinking would realize that it would have been a pretty terrible idea and would most likely end really badly. Pink was impulsive. I don't think she thought this out. She romanticized the idea of being able to change and then put her literal heart and soul into making it happen. Bluebird was a pretty fun episode. It really put Steven's whole philosophy to the test. Can every gem be redeemed? And the answer looks like no, not really. And that's because not every gem wants to be redeemed. And I think that's an important part. In therapy, we often say that we can't force a person to change. The person has to want to change. Because of this, Greg loses his hair and Steven continued to lose sight of his own vision. It's another example of his ideals not working out. His helper persona couldn't fix the issue. Steven continues to spread himself thin in a very special episode. He double books himself, and instead of postponing one, he tries to do both. I love seeing more Rainbow Quartz 2.0, and I wonder how they realize that they are a good babysitter. Steven is trying to feel like he is being helpful, but in reality, he is just pushing himself too far. And the people around him are failing to take notice because that's just the status quo. They're used to Steven just being able to be everywhere at once and to help everyone. It's gotten to the point where he doesn't feel like he can talk to anyone because that's just how it is. He's the one that helps people, not the other way around. Snow Day was a special episode in my book. I loved that Pearl finally shapeshifted through the power of Steven tag. The episode reminded me so much of the families that I work with. It can be hard for adults to handle their children growing up, and it is hard for kids to understand why that might be hard on the parents. Time works differently the older you get, and when you're hundreds of years old, I'm sure 2 years is nothing. But for kids, a year seems like a much longer time because they haven't been around for as long. A year to a 10-year-old is, I'm bad at math, but like what, 10% of their life? A year to someone who has been around for 40, 50, 100 years? Not as big of a deal. But child development happens so fast. Kids and adolescents reach milestones within months. Steven has hit some major developmental milestones. He's no longer the child that was upset about Cookie Cat anymore. He has been to space, he's dismantled a dictatorship, and not to mention he has a neck now. Steven is trying to distance himself from his past, viewing his past as childish, even though that's the self that I called highly emotionally intelligent. I think that this is in part because he doesn't have that idol to look up to anymore. When his mother was this angelic thing that he could aspire to be, now he knows that that's a lie. Now he isn't sure what to do with himself. He doesn't trust anyone would understand his feelings or have the emotional capacity to support him. As for the episode Why So Blue, I guess it was interesting seeing the other Lapises. Don't feel like it was very focused on Steven, so I'm not going to cover it too much here. Little Graduation and Prickly Pear were both fantastic episodes that really dived into Steven's deteriorating emotional state, and I loved both episodes so much. As much as I am sad my ship is destroyed, I love Shep. I thought they were a great character. I wasn't sure how the Sadie-Lars ship would even work anymore. Lars may be immortal, and Sadie not so much, so damn. Little Graduation touched on the fear of growing up and growing apart, something a lot of my clients have to deal with. We all celebrate graduations and are told that they are joyous occasions, and we often overlook, or more accurately ignore, the fact that it's also an ending. Endings are scary. It's hard to go from one environment that we know to something completely different. I once stayed at a position that was not the best, and I said this to my supervisor: the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know. This is not always the case. People grow up, people grow apart. Sometimes people are in your life for a set amount of time, and that's okay. Steven has a hard time with this. He takes the Lars Sadie ship crashing and burning harder than I do. Instead of accepting that his friends have lives outside of him or talking about his feelings to the people directly, he closes them in a bubble and almost smothers them to death. Even when it's obvious that it is his own issue, he tries to pass the blame off on other people. He is not used to being in the middle of an emotional issue. He is far more comfortable being the person to help other people work through their emotions. When it comes to facing his own emotions, he panics. Shep did a great job in pointing this out. I think it was very purposeful in that the person that knows Steven the least was the person that was able to point all this out to him. Because Shep is more or less an outsider for now, they were able to get to the heart of the issue that Steven's facing at this time, much like a therapist. And I hope Steven ends up getting an actual therapist. In the last episode, Prickly Pear, Steven takes a step back from Little Homeschool and takes up a new hobby, which sounds like a great idea. I think he should go back to helping Little Homeschool in the future, but first he needs to come to terms and work through some of his own emotional stuff, which he won't be able to do if he keeps gardening the way he is. Don't get me wrong, gardening is a great hobby. Studies have shown that being around green plants can really improve a person's mental health. What is not good is naming plants after friends and commenting about how plants can't leave him, even though one does. I feel like the episode was able to remind us how far the crystal gems have come and how far Steven is now lagging behind. He spent so much time helping others that he neglected himself. Steven is now envious about how far everyone else has gotten with their closure and with their own mental health, while he has been stunted and even regressed over time. He needs to find a way to come to terms with the big emotions that he is feeling, particularly about his mother. This episode showcased Steven's faulty cognitions by having Cactus Steven repeat them all. Steven takes out all his negative emotions on this small creature that counts on him entirely. It was really hard watching Steven be so mean to Cactus Steven, especially because it was really Steven being mean to himself. Steven trying so desperately hard to ignore that nagging voice in the back of his head. And instead of trying to talk to the crystal gems about it, instead of trying to reach out for support, he pushes those people away and even says some pretty mean things about it. I'm kind of sad that we didn't get to see the crystal gems' real reaction afterwards. I feel like it was just kind of comedic what was going on, but it's a big issue. And he said some pretty hurtful things, which is why Cactus Steven had to leave. It really showed what could happen when people repeat all the negative thoughts in their heads to their kids. I read a post about how your negative comments to your children becomes your children's inner voice, that inner critic that most people have. And that was very literal for Cactus Steven and Steven. So I think I'll end it here for now. That was fairly intensive, but I feel like I could go on for hours about this topic. And I'm excited for new episodes when they do come out. I will do more episodes like this. I'll try to maybe cut them up a little bit more. I think I was holding off in hopes that I could have like one overarching thought process about this, but it might be easier in the future if I just do 1 or 2 episodes at a time instead of an entire half a season, because there was a lot to go over. I really hope that this is leading up to Steven going to therapy. I think the show has done a great job with representation, and it would really help to break down the mental health stigma if it shows him going to therapy. And I think he could get a lot out of it. But anyways, this has been a video of therapist thoughts digging deeper into a children's cartoon than a high school English teacher digs into The Outsiders. If you like this video providing psychoeducation through nerdy topics, please like, comment, subscribe, all that other YouTubery stuff. If you have any more thoughts on Steven Universe and what future means for his mental health, please leave a comment down below. Bye!